everyone, this is Ashley Ellenboss with Sky House Herb School and Apothecary, and today I'll be sharing a winter tonic recipe with you. This winter tonic recipe is something that I'm going to show you how to make with hopefully some herbs that you already have on hand or ones that are pretty easy for you to find. This is a really important thing to have at your home and at your disposal because in the wintertime, there are certain patterns that seem to happen. And so if we can have herbs in our body on hand to easily make a tea out of, then we might be able to stop that pattern from going into things like colds and flus and, poor circulation, digestive sluggishness, and all of these things that tend to happen in the winter when the environment is colder and drier. So what we'll be doing is we'll be talking about different classes of herbs and different herbal actions. We'll be talking about herbs that are immune modulators, that is, that they modulate the immune system's response. So this means if a virus or something comes into your body, usually viruses, that your body will be able to better mount a response so that your body can take care of that virus before you end up getting really sick. Immune modulators can also downregulate your immune system if you're having an overreaction. This can be a histamine reaction or overreacting to things like pollen or dust, and sometimes our dust allergies can get worse in the wintertime. We're also going to look at adaptogens, which are herbs that help to regulate our body's stress response, circulatory stimulants to increase blood flow. This can help with digestion, but also with cold hands and feet. Moistening demulcents, because in the wintertime, if we're running heat, then our lungs and our inner bodies are going to tend to get dry, as well as our skin and our hair and our lips. So having some demulcent herbs in there will keep your body moist and help you to grab onto moisture and hold it to the mucosal membranes and to surface tissues. And then lastly, lung tonics. And the reason I threw lung tonics into our blend is that with COVID, we know that COVID tends to have an effect on the lungs. And again, our lungs, because the environment tends to be a little bit drier, our lungs can be in a bit of a weakened state. So if we do get sick, we might not be able to have that lung strength and be able to really expectorate or get rid of any foreign objects, membranes, mucus that happens to go into our lungs. All right, so those are the main actions. Now let's talk about the plants. So to start with, we're gonna choose a main herb. And this is what I teach all of my students at our herb school, is that when you're custom formulating, in this moment you're custom formulating for yourself or maybe for your family, you always want to choose a main herb that fits the most things that are applicable to you and primarily energetic. So I've chose 3 herbs that are going to be suitable for this time of year. I have nettle leaf here. So these are nettles, and these are dried nettles, urtica, dioica. What I love about nettle is that nettle is warm and dry. I don't love the dry for the winter, but I love that it's warming. It's detoxifying. It's really good with sluggishness. So if you feel that you're sluggish and depleted, then nettles would make a very good primary herb. The second herb I chose is holy basil. So holy basil is a lot of different varieties. You can get Oxymum gratissimum, Oxymum sanctum, or there's the Krishnarada, which is Tenaflorium. Any of these 3 Tulsis will do quite well. And Tulsi is very aromatic. It's warming. It's also drying. But what I really like about it is that it's also an adaptogen, and it is so full of aromatic oils and volatile oils that it can be a really good one for battling off viruses. It does have some immune activity too. And then the last one is spearmint, and you could choose really any mint. So you could do peppermint, you could do mountain mint, actually maybe not mountain mint because that one's a little too strong for the dose we're going to be doing, but any of your classic mints. If you harvested apple mint, chocolate mint, any of those garden variety mints, or just plain old peppermint or spearmint, this would work well. It has a really nice taste that everyone's familiar with. It also has high volatile oils, which are antiviral, and it's warming, and it's a great herb for improving digestion. So these are our 3 main herbs. So what we're going to do is once you choose, and you know what, if you wanted to choose 2, that's fine with me. What I'm going to show you is how to blend using a ratio method. Now, you can blend herbs using either a weight method where you weigh out everything, but I find when I'm teaching my students, especially for people that are doing it at home, to do it, using kitchen utensils is usually the most accessible and allows them to actually do it. So that's what I'd rather you do. I'd rather you just do this. So I'm going to show you the simplest method. So I'm going to choose nettle for myself because I love nettle, and I just feel like for me personally, this is a really good herb. So for the parts, for your tonic herb, you're going to do 5 parts. So for my part, I've chosen just a classic tablespoon, and I'm going to choose to do a heaping tablespoon. So here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So that's not a good 5. That's a good 5. So now I have 5 tablespoons of my nettles, and this is the base. This is going to be the base of my tea. And again, I could have chosen holy basil. I could have chosen a mint, and those would have been just fine. So I'll just move these guys off the screen or over to the side. Now, the second class of herbs we want to choose are going to be the ones with the primary actions that I mentioned before. So I'm going to go through some different options with you. And for these, we're going to do 2 parts of each. Okay, so for immune modulator, again, this is really important because this time of year, we want to make sure our immune system is ready to be active against whatever comes its way. So the main herbs I would recommend for this would be astragalus root. This is a wonderful Chinese herb. It has a little bit of it's like an earthy, sweet flavor to it. And it's really good also for the lungs. So it kind of feeds 2 birds with 1 hand. Another immune modulator is licorice root. And I have echinacea angustifolia root. So any of those would be fine. You could also choose another immune modulator. You could do echinacea purpurea, but these are the 3 that I think would be good. Now, the only time you would not want to use licorice root is if you have uncontrolled high blood pressure, or if you are pregnant. We just don't have enough research about using it in pregnancy yet. So I would avoid licorice if you have high blood pressure, if you're pregnant, and if you have a really tiny baby that you're breastfeeding, we just don't want it to activate the baby's blood pressure either. But otherwise, these herbs are safe and good to go. So I'm going to choose astragalus root for myself because I tend to have weaker lungs. So I know that that's an area that I want to make sure I doubly protect. So I'm going to do 2 parts, 1, 2, of my immune modulator. Okay, and again, you just have to choose 1 from each category. And we'll move these aside along with my notes. Keep those here. All right, then we have our adaptogens. Now, we actually have a little bit of an overlap here because astragalus and licorice are both adaptogens as well. So I'm going to choose licorice now, and I'm going to do just 1 part. Licorice is actually quite strong. It's very, very sweet. Like some of my students say it's almost like sickeningly sweet. So you might want to do half a part, but I really like licorice. I'm not going to do it like a super heaping teaspoon. I'm just going to do about this much. Okay. So that's my adaptogen. Then circulatory stimulants. So these are going to be herbs that help to move blood and really create some good heat and diaphoresis in the body. So I've chosen ginger root, which is pretty easy to find. You could use powdered too if that's what you have in your kitchen. So this is ginger root, and so I'm just going to use 1 part ginger root. I could use hawthorn too. Hawthorn's another good one. So if you tend to run really hot, maybe if you're already a really hot person, you might want to go with something like hawthorn, which moves the blood, but isn't necessarily so heating to the body. So here we go. So just about this much of ginger. My next category is a moistening demulcent. So again, this is what's going to be really helpful for keeping all the mucosal membranes nice and moist, the skin moist. And this is important because what we find is that viruses tend to adhere. They usually come in through the nasal cavity, and they especially adhere when the nasal cavity is dry. So the more your mucous membranes are moist, the harder it is for these viruses to attach and replicate. So we want to have a moist environment inside as a part of our protection. So the two herbs that I have for moistening demulcents is I have marshmallow root, a lovely herb, and I also have lungwort. So here we know lungwort is going to be coupling, it's doing two different functions. It's moistening demulcent, but it's specific for the lungs. So I'm going to choose for my moistening demulcent, I'm going to do marshmallow. I love marshmallow. It also is very sweet. I'm going to do 1 part of this. And for my lung tonic, I'm going to use lungwort. Now, if you don't have lungwort, this is one that's a little hard to find. I got this one from Mountain Rose. So you could buy it from Mountain Rose Herbs. But if you don't, if you can't get it, the marshmallow, I think, will be just fine. So I'm going to do 1 part of that as well. Now, the last category of herbs is going to be for the taste. Now, to me, like I could drink this on its own. I don't need a bunch of flavors. However, you might find that for your taste buds, you might want to add something that's going to give it a little more flavor. So things that I would suggest would be a mint if you didn't add it before. I would also suggest for this kind of a blend, fennel would be really nice. It would taste really good. And it also provides that warming circulatory tonic. It's also a good digestive aid. Cinnamon would be another option too. You could do cinnamon powder or crushed up cinnamon bark. And you could do probably about 1 part of those. Some other options that I have here, I have orange peel, sassafras bark, and dandelion root. So orange peel is another nice digestive herb. It's slightly bitter. And so it's a warming, bitter carminative. Dandelion root is really grounding, earthy. It's really good for the liver. It helps to build good gut flora. So if you have any issues with constipation or leaky gut or gas, you might want to do dandelion root to help build up that good gut flora. And sassafras is one that we don't use a lot because it does contain some compounds when taken in large doses can be potentially toxic, but in small doses, it's absolutely fine. And it has this beautiful root beer taste, which is really sweet and earthy and grounding. And it's a really good detoxifying herb. So it's good for the kidneys, the urinary system. So if you have any stuff going on with your urinary system, or you just want a little bit of extra post-holiday detox, you might want to add in, I would say, 1/2 part of sassafras, or you could do maybe 1 part of one of the other aromatics. So what am I going to do? I think I'm going to do dandelion root because it doesn't have a lot of aromatic taste, but I just like the earthiness that it brings into a blend. So I'm going to do 1 part of that. So that is my blend. Then all I'm going to do is just mix it together. And this is probably going to be about a 2-day supply. I would recommend when you start blending to do small batches just to see if you like the way it tastes, and then write it down on a piece of paper because that way you'll know exactly what it is that you made. So you don't forget, like, how much licorice? Oh, that was too much. I should do less the next time. So just start off with something like this using a tablespoon. And if you liked it, then you can make a much larger batch and store it in something like a brown paper bag, or store it in a mason jar like this, and that would be a good way to keep it. So what I would do, or what I'm going to do actually after this, is I'm going to take 1/2 of this amount. I'm going to put it in the bottom of a quart-sized mason jar, just like this. It's probably going to come up to about here. Then I'm going to boil some water, pour the boiling water over the top, and cap it and let it sit for 6 to 8 hours. After that, I'll strain it out. By that time, for me, it'll be the evening. So I'll stick it in the fridge and then let it sit overnight and drink it the next day. I could also brew it and, let's see, what time is it now? It's like the middle of the afternoon. I could probably have a cup of it and warm it up this evening, and that would be fine. You just don't want to let the herbs sit for too long in the jar because then they will start to ferment. And there's nothing in this that's going to be super aromatic, bitter, like chamomile, where it's going to start to taste really gross. All of these herbs are going to be pretty solid and stable, but that longer steeping time is going to really help us get the most out of our roots, which normally we want to boil. But if we can do a longer steep, we can also still get some of these good compounds out of the roots. So that's what you can do, and you can, drink that whole quart within a day. You can warm it up as you like. That would be the recommended, since it's going to combat the cold. And you can also make a double batch, store it in a half-gallon mason jar in your fridge, and just warm it up as needed, and that should last about 2 days. So let me know what you think. Let me know if you have any questions. I hope this was a good introduction to how to make your own herbal winter blend. And let me know if there's any herbs that you might think of to add in. And after you try your own recipe, please write in the comments. Let me know how it tasted, what you liked, what you noticed. It's always fun to hear what you come up with and what kind of recipes and formulas you end up making at home. So thanks all for watching, and I'll see you soon. Bye.